Hey everybody, welcome to the Bass Shed Podcast. My name's Ryan Roberts. How you doing, folks? My name's Ryan. I would like to welcome all the new listeners. Thanks for checking out the podcast. You can also find information at facebook.com/thebasshed, Twitter @BassShed, Instagram @thebasshed. There's a YouTube channel. There's links to all of it at thebasshed.com, and you can email me at ryan@thebasshed.com as well. You can sign up for the newsletter that goes out probably a couple times a month, right? Letting everybody know what's going on with the content on the website as far as upcoming guests on the podcast. And you can sign up for the newsletter by texting the word SHED, SHED, to 66866. Once again, that is the word SHED, SHED, to 66866. I want to take a quick second to talk about D. Lakin Basses. You can customize the bass of your dreams, and each order starts with a conversation with Dan Lakin. Dan Lakin is a co-founder of Lakeland Basses. His new company, D. Lakin Basses, are custom basses, and you can call Dan direct. Dan's number is 312-576-3943. Once again, that is D. Lakin Basses. Customize the bass of your dreams. Give Dan a call, 312-576-3943. To learn more about him, you can also check out the podcast episode with Dan Lakin. All right, so today on the show is Brent-Anthony Johnson. Brent-Anthony Johnson has written for major bass publications. He's going to talk about the magazines he's written for. He's also going to talk about extended range basses. Now, that is not a standard strung 6-string electric bass. He's going to talk about how those came to be. And he's actually really passionate about these. It was really fun to talk to him. We had a really nice chat. We talk about those things. We talk about just bass manufacturers in general. Some of his upbringing, all kinds of things. It was a really fun conversation. They had a really nice, natural, really easy flow to it. Brent-Anthony is a great guy, and I had a really fun time connecting with him. And where this conversation picks up is he was doing some tracks for a yoga, I believe his yoga teacher or yoga class, and I was asking him about that and what he was up to and how he was going about that. So that's where everybody's dropped off. That's where the conversation picks up, and I'm dropping you into it there. Here's my conversation with Brent-Anthony Johnson.
What are you actually doing? You're just, are they kind of like soundscape pad things?
Yeah, basically, I'm getting together with this guitarist, and we're stripping the tunes down and just kind of reworking them. And I've got a bunch of new material that I'm going to be doing. And that particular guitarist liked the original things that I had done back in 2002. So we're just reworking the tunes for today, and I've got some new arrangements and some things of that nature. So
nice.
I'm just trying to move forward to the best of my ability, as we all are in this day and age.
Sure. Trying to navigate how to do it now.
Yeah, whatever the scene is, because the scene is it's actually a blessing and a curse in the sense that the scene is so broad now that this all started back in the spring. I started getting requests for the album again. And
okay.
and so
which record is that? Which album?
The first one, the one I said earlier, the Sonal album with Chris.
Okay.
And then I had done some sideman stuff with an artist, and we were doing a couple of those tunes, and people had heard those. And so I started getting requests for that. And then, of course, I'm working with a poet now who does, he called it Hindu poetry. I call it motivational speaking.
Okay.
And he dug it as well. So I don't know. It's just one of those things you never quite know what's going to happen. You know?
Yeah,
So
day
day
to
to
day,
day.
that's the life.
So
Yeah.
in anticipation of all that, you know, I went and looked for the link on YouTube, and of course it was broken, and it had probably been broken for quite some time. So I had to fix that and get some other things together and repost, and it was just a very opportune time for me to do that, since we would be talking, you know, that sort of thing. And I've had a couple of people ask me on from a magazine that I write for a link to that.
Okay, what magazine?
So,
like I know you write for Bass Musician, right?
Yeah, it was from Bass Musician this time around. I had written for I have written for Bass Frontiers, and back in 1999 or so, I started writing for a magazine that's defunct now, called Global Bass Magazine, which was Warren Murphy, who's passed on actually. And when Global Bass Magazine closed, he opened up a magazine very briefly called Bass Inside, and I wrote for that magazine as well. And I was able to actually
Bass Inside.
Bass Inside, yeah. I can't find the information about it. I think there was like less than a year's worth of editions that came out of that one. But in that magazine, I was able to speak with Percy Heath right after he released Love Letter.
Ooh.
So and Percy and I became really good friends as a result of that. It was really, he was such a nice man. He would just call me randomly those last few years, and we would chat, you know. And he liked to reef fish, and he liked to do some things, and wanted to talk about anything other than bass. I mean, I had to interview him for the, you know, I reviewed the record when it came out, Love Letter, and then we of course produced an interview for him because he's Percy Heath. I mean,
sure.
And but in the context of the interview and in the midst of everything that was going on, he just became a really good friend, and we ended up speaking many times, maybe a couple dozen times before he passed on, and it was a real blessing.
Did it ever get to a point, like connecting with such an icon, where you got desensitized to, like, you're talking to Percy Heath? Or was it always in the back of your mind and you're just kind of like, man, this is amazing, I'm still talking to Percy Heath? Like,
right, not in his case. Yeah, not in his case. I mean, I've been able to speak with a lot of great cats, and after a while, you become friends, you know, and with a lot of people. One of my mentors is Jimmy Haslett, the great Jimmy Haslett, and he's provided me with a great deal of work over the years and things of that nature. He's given me a lot of gigs, and he's been really good to me. Another guy was the great Dave Carpenter. And you know, just so many great players. Taya Card is another great friend, and with them, every once in a while, it's into this friend mode where we're laughing about something completely, you know, inane. And I will remember, but this guy played on Bobby McFerrin's Bang Zoom back in '95, changed my life, you know. those or he'll come through town, and he's come through town with, of course, Jeff Lorber. He's come through town with Oz Noy in the case of Jimmy Haslett. And I've seen, you know, Kai Hard a number of times, of course, as I was studying with him, and when I was living in Boulder, Colorado, he was there quite a bit, quite often. And you know, so certain players, you just never. Another player, Percy Heath, I had several conversations with the great Michael Brecker.
Wow.
And that never, I never got used to that.
Man. Yeah.
Because of, you know, various different aspects of speaking with Michael Brecker, you never quite get used to that. That's Michael Brecker. Yeah. So Pat Metheny, another guy I've spoken with a few times. Yeah,
now,
he's
were those for articles for the bass magazines, or were just kind of in passing?
Just let's see. With Pat Metheny, let's start and go backwards. With Pat Metheny, just met. I lived in Denver quite a bit, and I lived in Boulder actually for 20 years, and the band came through quite often. And
the group, or on some trio dates?
Yeah, the group, just the group.
Okay.
Yeah, the group. They came through with Richard Bona. They came through with, of course, Steve Rodby is another great icon, you know. And so, getting to meet those guys for a magazine, can I come back and hang, and just everybody act normally, I have to work on not being starstruck, and
On
at the
not
same
being so what?
starstruck, completely starstruck.
Sure.
But at the same time, there's this, you kind of have to put on this jacket where it's like, hey, how are you? And I learned a long time ago that if you're a nice dude, everybody will talk to you.
Yeah.
Most people will talk to you. Most people will talk to you. I met some real sticks too, but that some real sticks, man. When I was doing clinics, I did clinics a lot through the 90s and early 2000s. I did a lot of clinics with a lot of specifically for Aguilar and for Ashdown.
Okay.
And I had great experiences with both of those companies. Mark Goodday is still a very, very close friend of mine, as is Mr. Green from Status Graphite, Rob Green from Status Graphite. And always had a great time with them personally. They would put me in these shows, and I had to do with some of the other players, and it's kind of like, what are you doing here? Sort of thing. But by and large, people will talk to you. And it's led to some of my best interviews. It's led to me sharing some of those people with our community, the bass community. So it's been really cool.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, So I hope I answered your question. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So right now you're still you're writing for Bass Musician magazine. Now, is it typically interviews that you do, or do you do like year rundowns or?
I do a lot of years, yeah.
Okay,
I'm
I
sorry.
haven't checked out the magazine too much. Like, yeah, I know, I'm aware of it. I think
yeah,
like maybe 4 or 5 issues deep or something.
When they first started, I got a contact from Raul and from Raul Amador, and then of course from my editor, his wife. Asking if I would write for the magazine. I had written a lot for Bass Frontiers when it started up again,
So, but did you ever write for Bass Player?
You know what? They never asked me to. I did a couple reviews for them, just to kind of show them what I do, and through various different connections. Maybe it was because I was doing endorsements at the time and that sort of thing. They never really quite picked up on me, which was cool. I was okay with it because I kind of like the very familial aspect of writing for something that's not such a monolithic application. I'm saying something not so large. I can actually call my editor.
Right, and not just be part of a machine.
Exactly, and
cranking out whatever.
Yeah, when Bass Frontiers started back in the '90s, I wrote for them, and when it started up again, they just happened to call me. Hey, you remember us? We're back. Because it was Jim Hyatt back in the day, back in '95 or so, a little later than that, and then. Dave Fowler started it. He was Dolly Parton's tour manager and road manager and sort of band director for many, many years, and he was sort of changing places and doing some things live out of Nashville. They bought the magazine, and I know him. I'd met him before, and we'd spoken before. And so he literally called up and asked if I would write. And sure. And basically began looking for someone to write it about because I don't have a wealth of people. Hey, I'm going to write an interview for you one of these days. What have you? So since I'm asked to kind of fill the shoes, usually it's who I'm listening to.
That's great.
Yeah, since the '90s, it's always been I'm going to get something about Jimmy because he's incredibly prolific. Number one, and number two. His is one of the phone numbers I have in my phone where I can literally call Jimmy and say, hey man, what are you working on? Can we do a story? And he's so cool and he's so approachable, and that's where it starts. And if that fires off and everybody says, oh man, he wrote another cool piece on Jimmy, or he wrote a cool piece on Jimmy, or what have you, that leads to other things. I've actually had people call me and say, I love what you wrote about how you presented the story on this subject. So,
Sure.
so for bass musicians and for Bass Frontiers in particular, it's always been gear and interviews. I'll send you a link. And you can read about the stuff I've written. That'll be fun.
Well, I now just, out of curiosity, who are you listening to right now?
I always listen to I'm always listening to Damien Erskine from his very first album.
Okay.
I'm always listening to Matt Garrison. As far as the players are concerned, I love the genre zouk. So I'm always listening to Kareem Ziad. I'm always listening to Sixon, especially Sixon. I love Michel Alibo. I think he's awesome. I'll listen to anything that Lindley Martha plays on because he's an amazing player. Rock-wise, I I got into rock back in the day listening to Rush. So I have sitting on my desk right now is Billy's Big Beautiful Book of Bass. So every time I'm looking at that book, I throw on, moving pictures or hemispheres or, and that was certainly my, when I was in high school, by the time I graduated from high school, I could get every Rush tune from the first album all the way through Signals, I believe.
Okay.
So that was kind of my era of that band. And they came back with Roll the Bones doing kind of a more down kind of a rock thing. That was cool. I was back in. I love
being a youngster and getting into progressive music. What was it initially that attracted you to that music? Because I mean, so much of what they're doing are advanced, kind of academic ideas sometimes, and it's the things you can't really wrap your head around. It's like the first time I heard Coltrane when I was like 14. I had no idea. I had no idea I had no idea at all.
Right on. I think that's it.
I think it was a tour de force. Like, I think I had to figure it out. That's the only reason I kept listening to it, is because I had to know what the hell that they were doing.
Okay, there's that. In my case, when it comes to Rush, when I was I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up on the Illinois-Iowa border in a place called the Quad Cities. That's where I grew up. And for some reason, we were one of the test markets for early HBO, and it was called before it was called Home Box Office. It was called Channel 100, and they showed movies from 6 a.m., 9 a.m., noon, 3 p.m., 6 p.m., 9 p.m., midnight, etc. All the way around the clock. Every 3 hours, a new movie was coming on, and that's back when they were showing like Westworld and stuff like that. They were getting their library together, and because they didn't have much of a playlist themselves, they were playing. I found that if you watched the end of the movie, the credits rolled, they were playing concerts. So I saw, So I saw, is it Pink Floyd or it's Pink Floyd? Somebody live in Pompeii. There was a Led Zeppelin concert that was in regular rotation, and it was Rush's Livia Stradiato and The Trees were the dual video that was a thing that was on regular rotation, and I was in grade school. I'm a little older than I was in grade school. Yeah, when this thing happened, they started playing this stuff, and I saw this cat playing this Rickenbacker, and and of course I grew up in a multi-ethnic family, so we were hip to Santana. I was always hip to Santana. I was always hip to lots of different. I was hip to Steppenwolf as much as I was hip to Al Green. So that's kind of how my thing went. So when I first heard the opening of like Cygnus on Farewell to Kings, I think it is, I heard Santana's heard a real big Santana influence, as I did in Livia Stradiato. That solo that he takes, it's just really that he's by himself. There's a pad behind him or just a synth note behind him, and he's playing these licks. It's very Santana to me, and I was like, wow, cool. So then I got into that.
Right, like gave you a point of reference. Like I can relate to this because this connects to the music.
A lot of stuff I know. Yeah, and just the tone and just I had to learn how to play it. I had to learn how to do it. I could be completely geek right now and say that there was this one lick on Livia Stradiato that I had to learn. And so when I pulled out my bass one night I didn't have an amp on. Everybody was asleep. I was a kid in my house, and I just started going for this lick. And it was the first time I really had done that. I've been reading and kind of playing in jazz band and kind of doing that kind of stuff, and wasn't really much of an improviser because I really wanted to learn how to play correctly. Though I would hear something on the radio in those days and sit down and figure things out, and I learned I had an ear for that.
Okay.
By the way, I want to take it aside and say that I also listen to music like The Contortionist, Animal Leaders. I listen to that stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff. I have a program. Essentially, it's an app that I have that's called. Let me find it. It's a Quello, Quello, and it's basically YouTube but full concerts. It's a music station app. Quello. It's amazing.
Quello.
Quello.
What, it's just like, no, it's not bootleg concerts, right? It's not like
no,
a bunch
no.
of,
This is
it's like actual footage from concerts.
Beautiful stuff. I mean,
okay.
Anything you can buy, anything you know of, anything that you can find, it's there. This high HD quality, and you can have it on your phone, you can have it on your laptop, whatever. You can have it on your TV if you've got that big smart TV, and it's just wonderful because oft times if I'm here because I work out of my home.
Yeah.
If I'm waiting for the next student to call, I'm vacuuming or I'm watching my granddaughter, I'll have Quello on just watching some concert. And so it's a really cool thing. I love that app. It's a wonderful thing. And so I got turned on to a lot of different, like Between the Buried and of course I have students that are all college level students. I usually teach, college level students the way through. I have a couple students who are 5-year dual majors and things of that nature who are just finishing up their music education.
Are you teaching at a school, or
I'm teaching. I'm an online teacher, so I do contract for various different schools. And where I live right now, there's a number of colleges, and I play gigs, and so inevitably, someone says, "Oh yeah, hey, you teach," and that leads to, and that's how it's been. I taught my first bass student when I was 14 years old. That would have been back in 14. That was back in 1979, believe it or not. Yeah.
I think I started. I couldn't drive yet. Like, my mom used to have to drop me off to this music store.
Me too.
Where I was the bass teacher, and like coordinate with my brother. Like, all right, he's got 5 students today, so like, the brother would have to come pick me up. I couldn't drive yet, but I think I was like 16 or something, and it was, and maybe you experienced this too, the look on the student's face.
Exactly.
I'm the bass teacher, and they're like, what?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The way it happened for me, there was a local player who was teaching at a music store near my home, and his wife was a nurse, and they were living here, and he was teaching and working the retail aspect of the store as well, and she got transferred somewhere. I can't remember where it was like Baltimore, someplace horrible, someplace I never wanted to go. I mean, it was like Pittsburgh, Baltimore. It was like, all I could think of was like, there was way more snow than I want to be with, and there's way
For
more
any
cities.
in Baltimore.
or Pittsburgh.
I don't know
or Pittsburgh.
If it's actually horrible. I've never.
I
don't know.
I've actually toured those places, and thankfully not in the winter. But of course, when you're the other, let me add this as well. Is the fact is that it was a big city, and coming from the Midwest, it was like, I lived relatively close to Chicago at the time, and that was a big enough city. I didn't start going to Chicago and playing gigs until I was about 16, 17 years old.
So the big city vibe was a complete culture shock.
That's what I'm talking about. So he moved there with his wife across country, and he approached me at 14 years old and said, "Would you be interested in taking over my student load at this music store?" And I, of course, my dad thought he was joking. My dad thought it was a big joke, and my dad was like, he'd pick me up for my lesson, and he's like, my son to come down here and teach. And that was, like I said, that was 1979. And the guy says, yeah, I would love that. Be making $10 an hour. It was $5 a half-hour lesson.
Okay.
So into 1979, I think minimum wage was like $2.75. or something like that. So, so, Dad, my father was, blue collar guy, and, you should probably get a real job. And I was like, well, Dad, Mom is making $10 an hour at the moment, working for a local company. She's working 40 hours a week. I'm certainly not. But, for the
I'm
hours
also
I
14.
Yeah,
I'm not
and
even
for
old
the,
enough to actually work yet, Dad. Like, well,
right.
2 years. Right. Like, I had 2 years before I'm even eligible for the job force, and I'm making what Mom's making.
Exactly. And so he was sort of in and out of it. That my parents weren't terribly supportive when I was a kid, but it was
They were.
he couldn't really they were not. But he couldn't deny that. He couldn't deny
Is it that they weren't supportive because they didn't understand it? I think fundamentally, like initially, I ran into some of those things with my parents, like in the early years, of like being offered a lot of opportunities, and my parents just not knowing that, not knowing and this is in Phoenix, so it's not like the industry here in LA. Right. Phoenix, it's whatever, but it's not really on the radar at all for them, and so I don't fault them in retrospect.
No, not at all.
At the time, I thought it was crap. Like, come on. Like, when you make money doing this.
When you're after Mercy and they're saying no, you're like, but you don't understand. This is a jazz bass. There's a jazz bass at the pawn shop. It's $250. I'm trying to get that bass. That was my story.
Was your pawn shop bass?
Oh, of course. My first bass was a blonde Aria jazz bass copy, and then I was
I feel like all pawn shops are Aria dealers.
It's true. It's very true.
Find an Aria.
It's very true.
If they have one bass, it's gonna be an Aria.
It's an Aria. I didn't even think Arias were cool until I started seeing John Taylor from Duran Duran playing them, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, okay, I guess that's okay. Then I had I was gifted a Univox, believe it or not, a Univox EB2 copy, sort of the 335 F holes. Only it was full hollow, and it was a feedback machine. And I was gifted that instrument and a distortion pedal. That was hilarious. Yeah, because I had a Fender Bassman, and then I had a Sun Coliseum, because I didn't make small amps at the time. I mean, I was in college before I got, something that was easy enough for me to carry, believe it or not. But yeah, so I went through a Bassman, I went through a Sun Coliseum, a horn, and then I went through an SVT, and so that was really fun. Then I was given a bass called an SD Curly. These are all basses you'll have to go look up online for you kids out there. Who it was a 32 scale instrument. The only time I've ever seen it, I've seen it a couple of times. Alec John of Bon Jovi is playing a white one in the Runaway video. That's the only time I've ever. I took that bass to college with me, along with another bass. That was my first basses, and then by the time I was driving, or getting ready to start driving, I was already playing, like I said, in the jazz band at high school, and I needed a Fender.
I do want to stop there in the journey. So you get plugged in a jazz band. Now, was this because that was the only outlet at school to play the electric bass, or were you listening to jazz records at the time, and were you captivated by the music? Like, what came first? The actual, like, this is the only gig in school is to play in the jazz band as an electric guy, so I'm going to do that. Or had you been listening to jazz previously and, like, were actually into the music before you were playing it?
I was into... I have an uncle who's dyed-in-the-wool audiophile, had a listening room in his house, and every Sunday he would spend hours in this room sort of drinking scotch and listening to old jazz records. That's a really cool system.
Man,
really cool system.
What a great thing.
Dude, and so I would go over, his name is Sylvester, he still was, God bless him, I love the man.
Yeah.
And he still has a list.
This Sunday? Like,
yeah.
I'll make it.
Right on. But the man has probably 2,000 records.
I love it.
And what attracted me, I was really into, guns and things like that when I was a kid. I was really into trying to learn how to shoot and trying to learn about weapons and stuff. I don't know why. And
blue collar small town, like I did it. You know, we'd.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, I think that was most of it.
That's what you do on a Saturday afternoon. You'd like go drive
out
into the desert and then just like go shoot old refrigerators.
Exactly. I have so many great stories about that. But he showed me a Thelonious Monk album where he's playing a piano. It's like a World War II, it's like an animated thing where he's playing an upright grand piano in a dilapidated, destroyed, bombed out place, and he's got a weapon on his back. I think there's even a Nazi flag draped over something, and he's got a cigarette in his mouth. And he's playing this piano. It's an iconic album cover, and he showed me that, and then I was like, oh, that's cool because it looks like something from a Sergeant Rock or Sergeant Fury comic book that I was reading at the time. And he played some of the music, and it was some of the craziest stuff I've ever heard. I was just like, wow, that's neat. And he explained what it was doing, and then he told me, I think when I was I might have been 12, he told me that Charlie Mingus and I had the same birthday. He's 42 years older than me, but we share the same birth date. And he just kind of slowly, he wasn't even really sneaky about it. He split facts. And he said, oh, yeah, your birthday's so-and-so. Oh, yeah, man, April 22nd. Oh, man, you and Charlie Mingus have the same birthday. And I was like, wow. And so he played some Mingus. Mingus is a bass player. Dig that. Played some Miles. But, of course, my parents, I was born in the 60s, so, of course, my parents, by the time I was old enough to really start digging music, they were listening to Herbie Hancock's Headhunter and Romain Hubert Laws and that kind of stuff, you know what I'm saying? I was kind of hearing instrumental music, not quite knowing where to put it, and my Uncle Sylvester sort of put it in a place where he said, this is where this comes from. This you're listening to, this is where it comes from.
That's amazing to have a context for, like, that electric period, like late 60s, early 70s. Jazz was trying to understand electronics.
Exactly. Exactly.
But to have someone put that in context where he's like, okay, here's what these dudes were doing, like maybe taking Herbie and putting it in the 60s quintet. Like, that's the same dude, but now he's doing this thing. That's
exactly. And he was playing Korea for him. Yeah, but see the glory of it, honestly, Ryan, the glory of it is that it wasn't past. I was there at that time in linear time. Right. He was talking about current events. He's like, yeah, that guy has picked up a synthesizer in the last couple of years, and he's doing this. And I was, oh, cool, because when I was a little guy, there was a show on Friday nights called the Midnight Special, and it was nothing but bands like R&B bands, and funk bands like Mandrill, and everybody had an ARP guitar or a Moog, and there's all these crazy sounds, and there was always somebody banging on bungas, and it was that sort of thing. And so you bring that into Dizzy Gillespie's thing, and you start to play. My uncle told me, by the way, that Stevie Wonder's "Check It Out, Don't You Worry About a Thing" was a song for my father by Horace Silver. He goes, dude, it's the same tune. And I was like, no way. Da 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 da. It's like, yep. And so I was like, oh, okay. So and I started to learn about, the idea of homage and homage, and how these cats, how the young kids were paying homage to the older guys. And so I kept having to look. Once I fell in love with Stevie Wonder, it was like, wow, this guy's playing some really amazing music. Once you spend the summer listening to Stevie Wonder and Earth, Wind and Fire, you're gonna, if you're a musician, you're gonna travel backwards to find out where. And then I learned about Ramsey Lewis and that Marie White had come from Ramsey Lewis, and it was okay, man. So there's all this history. You just start to literally, I see myself in my mind eating that stuff, just like being hungry to get more or understanding of it and learn more and more on the instrument, and then asking my bass teachers, and theory teachers and piano teachers and things of that nature, what does that mean, and where does that come from? Do you know where this comes from? Why is Jeff Beck playing Goodbye Pork Pie Hat? What is okay? I know the original tune now, and his version is different.
There's so many answers to that. Jeff Beck can do whatever he wants. That's my answer. Jeff Beck, just be Jeff Beck.
So
That
yeah, I mean, so the music was there, and I had access to it, and I was also playing acoustic contrabass at the time. I still do, and there just the tone, hearing people play.
Now, what age did you get into that? How much later? So by 14, you're teaching electric bass. How many years had you already
Right.
been playing?
By that time, I'd been playing.
What age were you when you got the
I was
first?
like 11, and then
Okay.
when I was 12, was this was a 5/8 size acoustic bass at this
Sure.
in this school, and a guy named Ray Warner, who was the band director, said, "Hey, what can you play this? Can you?" I actually played a C major scale for him and figured it out. Just no technique at all. I was just hammering, flailing away at it. But I did make it sound like C major. It was in tune. And he said, "Would you consider playing bass for, the junior high band?" And so, yeah, I guess. I mean, if you want me to.
Sure.
And so that's the thing happened. And of course, I'm not really sure what to do with my parents at this time. I'm leaving the bass at school and that sort of thing. So that between that and neighborhood bands, I kind of got into the thing and just kept learning. I was learning skills. I mean, there were really no bass books when I started playing. They're just the market now is exploded. But a friend of mine who was a Berkeley graduate guy who was a guitarist and bassist named Dennis Neal, who was teaching me at this time, told me to get trombone books and that sort of stuff. Yeah. I tried cello books because I love the sound of the cello, but of course it goes lower, so I was, But he said, yeah, get trombone books and check those things out. And
I'm surprised that even the band director wasn't hip to just the samandal. Just because at some point he probably had to take a methods class and
that was there.
Yeah,
it's been around forever. But there was also a book by Carol Kay, who I actually ended up studying with in the late 80s. She was living in Denver with one of her daughters, and I got a chance to take 4 or 5 lessons from her, maybe half a dozen lessons.
Is she still around?
Yeah, she's still around.
Yeah.
But
because I
she had
living in Palm Springs for a while, and then I went to her website, and then I heard she was back in the Midwest somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually know where she's at. I wanted to actually get her on the podcast. I'd love to talk to her.
I'll see if I can find her. I'll see if I can find her. She was because she's always at NAMM and she's always doing something. And, But I'll try to track her down
before NAMM and then just go, do the in-person.
Yeah.
At
that'd be
NAMM.
so cool. That'd be so cool. I'd love to help you try that. Yeah, I'd like to help out with that. But yeah, she was living in Denver, and so she had this book that I had. She gave me a new copy of a book that I got way back in the day, and really enjoyed it. That was sort of how I learned about rhythms and things like that. And samandal's great, but it's real straight ahead. It's real academic. You know what I'm saying? There's some cool things in it,
dry.
but
it's
really
very
dry. It's very dry.
Really, I've taught out of it over the years, and me too. But you have to reinvent it, for the students.
You really do.
I mean, just dealing with the upright at that stage of the game, you're holding the bow right and making
right.
It's going to be scratchy and it's going to be really difficult to listen to, and then the student gets discouraged, and then they don't know where to put their hands, and they're learning how to read music. It's an onslaught of information, and it's a very physical instrument. So trying to somehow make it enjoyable and musical for the student at that stage it's been a challenge over the years.
Yeah. What I try to do
the way
is
the information is broken up, it's solid.
Yeah. It's fantastic. It's undeniable. It's fantastic. It's a great book. You just have to once again reinterpret it for yourself and for whomever especially if you're trying to teach something. What a great mistake. First few times I attempted that, I'm sure I butchered it. But what I started doing is getting into songs that had a really cool sort of horn thing, like a tuba thing. The latest song I was teaching out of a lot for acoustic bass, early acoustic bass, was one of Benny Grebb's books, albums. Benny Grebb being the great Austrian or German drummer, Austrian drummer, I think. Really, really cool. He had an album that I'm trying to find the name of. I'm trying to find it here. And he used, there it is. One was called Greb Fruit, Greb Fruit, one word. Benny Grebb, the drummer, and his rhythm section is horns. It's him playing with just a big, like a Dirty Dozen brass band thing, and so the bass lines are all done by a tuba. They're all done by a tubaist who's amazing. And
now stylistically, is it that kind of second line New Orleans?
Yes, very much.
Brass band thing?
Yes, but at the same time, though, with the acoustic bass, if you can track little lines, you're learning about lines and placement, notes, boop, 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 things like that. It gives the young player, an idea. Number one, they can track with a tune. I can do this. And the other thing is that's placement. That's where those notes go, as opposed to because everybody does it differently. I just get great books. So you read through this book, we'll read through it together, and then develop your own sort of thing. Whereas the way you get into a note and out of a note is so incredibly important that it becomes a very individual thing. And so I just use that on the journey with students, especially young upright players. When we start talking about, well, what do you want to sound like? Well, what do you like? What are you listening to?
Right.
Because that becomes very important. Even bang on this thing, I want to be Flea, whatever. With a young acoustic cat, he's obviously hearing something that I need to track down and identify.
Yeah, that's always an interesting thing with young students as well, is like trying to understand what it is that is exciting them about music, and so you can take them down that. Right. That's always the goal, is to keep, I think, students excited about playing. So whatever it is, if they want to sound like Flea, or if they want to sound like Geddy Lee, or whatever. What are you listening to? And cool, there's fundamentals, because both of those guys understand bass technique, so we're gonna have to learn bass technique. But cool, we can aim everything else towards those principles. But I guess the disconnect is sometimes they don't know. They just, maybe that's what the friends are listening to, and it's difficult to try to get them to understand it, but it's also a very fun process.
Oh, it's great. It's a great thing.
Thinking about themselves and music, and connecting to music, and what is it about this thing, and I find that that part of doing the one-on-one lesson thing is always really fun, because you get to watch them kind of learn. They not being exposed to music for the first time, but there's this awakening that kind of occurs.
Absolutely, this blossoming,
if the student really wants to go, there's sometimes they just want to do it because, like, I don't know, I got a friend who plays drums and another one who plays guitar, so I'm the bass guy.
There is. But I mean, I find out a lot about myself through teaching as well. I mean, I think that I've certainly used aspects and memories and facets of those lessons when they're particularly good, when they're particularly heartwarming and well felt. I can apply that to myself. I find, for some odd reason, I've certainly related to the idea of I'm sort of teaching myself a lot, teaching through students, especially when I'm trying to present in a classroom context. I'm really learning about myself again, learning more about myself, trying to do this better, trying to become less profound and more sort of foundational in my presentation of teaching. And so, and that certainly has made its way into my playing as well. At my age, I really dig playing simply. I really like the sound of my instruments when I was trying to work through them in my 20s and 30s to present my great ideas, such as it were. Now I'm just in love with the sound of the instrument. And I think it really comes through in in the recordings that I'm doing now, it just sounds much more like music. I'm maturing, thank God. But I'm really happy about that. And of course, as I mature, I'm becoming a better teacher.
Yeah, and I think, and maybe it's because both of us started teaching at a young age, and so we were still. I mean, I'm still learning. I'm not going to say that I'm not at all, but when I'm 16 and I'm still just a sponge and I'm soaking up everything musical I can get my hands on, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm trying to not only process it for myself, but now I have to make it digestible for somebody else.
Exactly.
There's a thing there that never really left. Learning how to convey this information, whether like things I don't think about anymore when I'm playing, and I'm sure most pros who are teaching have encountered this. Like, there's just so many things we don't think about. What I'm thinking about when I'm playing is decisions. I'm thinking about what decisions to make for the music. That's where my head is. I'm not thinking about chords. I'm not thinking about scales. I'm thinking about ideas and decisions. Like that's where I'm at. But that's not. This is an F major scale. So now having to go back and all right, now I got to think about an F major scale again. Like, when was the last time I thought about one of those? And talk through it and why. And it teaches me those fundamentals again when I have to talk about it.
Yeah.
I love teaching. I love teaching, and I love having to get in tune with those things that I don't think about that often again. It's like I get I get to experience that again for the first time, but now I'm much more aware of it all, and that's helpful.
It is. I mean, I often have to break down chords and say, no, not that. Don't play the 9 on that, please. And I got to actually think about the chord that's actually being played, that the 9 that okay, it's this note. Great. It just becomes a way of thinking, living, and breathing, and that's cool, man. I mean, music is such a wonderful gift. I was probably 40 years old before I realized that not everybody could play. I assumed that if I could do it, anybody else could do it if they wanted to do it. And it was a matter of choice versus a matter of gifting. And so, and once I realized it was a gift. It was something because there's so many things in life that I'm really horrible at. really, really bad at.
Likewise. But
the music
putting things in the mail on time or
oh man. But there's so many things that I don't have. I wish I had. That I really have learned to appreciate music on a deeper level, because I do at least have that. And when I'm running from whatever, myself, whomever, situations, bad, not even decisions as much as things that are inflicted upon you as a human being that you have to kind of endure as part of your maturation process.
The only way around it is through it, those types of things.
That's it. Yeah, most of life. And so it's really wonderful for me that I can wake up in the morning and before I have to deal with anything, I can sit and play some nice whole tones on my whole notes, rather, not whole tones, nice tony whole notes on my fretless or on my acoustic, and I can play a few notes and let the day sort of open. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Figuring out the kind of peak hours for me to practice was pivotal. This happened, I don't know, maybe my early 20s. I realized that that's what I need at the end of the day. So I'm not a morning guy. It takes me forever to get out of bed and actually get going for the day. But so the last thing I want to do is just just sit and work on a transcription or something. But at the end of the day, once I found that out, this is where I go to just get rid of it all. Mm-hmm. And this is and it's very much I do not surf, but it's the feeling I hear from people who do surf out here. There's like this really kind of zen experience where they can get in touch with themselves, and it's their personal alone time, and
Yes.
and like I need that for myself just as a human. Like, it's outside of being a musician, which I also need it as a musician, but just as a human, like, I need that time.
Yes.
And the
I think we all do. I mean, I very much agree. I think we all need that, and those of us who actually are managed to get it are certainly better for it. I think we certainly harmonize better with our individual worlds than if we don't get it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's a great way of saying it, because if I haven't played in a few days, whether it's a gig or practicing or whatever, which is actually rare at this point, but for whatever reason, I haven't just touched the instrument in a few days. Like, it's a noticeable thing. Like, what's up with you, man? I don't know why I'm in such a bad mood, but I just need to play. I just need to play.
Why are you stopping your own oxygen flow? Why are you not breathing?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this to yourself? It's that old thing, why are you hitting yourself? Why are you hitting yourself? Life is bullying you to the place where you're beating yourself up.
Yeah, right.
Really? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. No, it's great. And so, like, when you go there, is it hands-on time with the instrument that really kind of feeds your person? Is it just sitting with records sometimes?
Is it?
For me,
I'm sorry.
Different depending on the where I'm at in life. Like, I've talked about my divorce on the podcast a decent amount, I guess. When I was going through that, like, there was for some reason I didn't want to play. I just had to, like, sit and absorb music.
Yeah.
And I needed, and I was listening to a lot of singer-songwriters, and I needed to know that what I was feeling was somehow validated. And so I was listening to specific singer-songwriters for that, just to let me know that I wasn't alone, in what I was going through. But I couldn't really deal with the bass yet. I couldn't.
Right. No, I understand.
It's not like I could process this thing through music yet. Later I could channel those things, but
no, dude, I mean, music is also that wonderful healing river that we get in to rejuvenate. I mean, I specifically spend time not playing and listening.
Yeah.
I love the idea of just, because that is my fountain of youth. That is my go-to. That's resuscitation. That's music is it. It's the pool, man. I've driven home from gigs, a couple hours to drive home from a gig, just going, I just need to get home, get a shower, load my gear in the house, sit down, and put on ...
Yeah, and it's typically for me, like, when I got, like, the long way home, like, a couple hours home from a gig or something, whatever I was just playing, the furthest thing from that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I certainly relate to that.
Yeah. With, like, some, like, 4-hour jazz gig or something, like, I'm going to listen to country the whole way home. I need something else. I've already done my time there. Just put on Brad Paisley and get to the house.
There you go. No, I certainly agree to that, and I adhere to that sort of practice. I'm serious. I go to, from the gigs I've been playing lately, well, actually, this new series is totally different. The last series I was doing was a little more intense musically, and I found myself listening to a lot of Tarmac Adam, this band out of Australia. As a matter of fact, the bassist. Split Ends became Crowded House. Part of those guys became Tarmac Adam.
Got it.
And it's an older couple dudes. Now it's a duo, but before it was a band. And the bass player from Split Ends and Crowded House still lives over in Wales, but still contribute bass tracks and keyboard tracks to the project. But it's just a dude playing acoustic guitar and singing, and a guy playing keyboard, bass, and sort of a multi-instrumentalist guy. But they have such uplifting and fun songs. He can be talking about something completely sad, but the way they present music is ebullient. It's happy. It's kind of like as far as singer-songwriters are concerned, they're very, very crafty. So I got turned on to them some years back, and I'm listening to them. They're a go-to because of my, I hate to bring it up again, because of my age, I listen to a lot of 80s music. A virtual crap ton, if you will. You can quote me on that, of 80s music. I listen to Berlin. I listen to Joe Jackson. I listen to, Dick Kershaw is one of my favorite singer-songwriters of all time, actually. His albums, Radio Musicola and The Works. His tune, Wounded Knee in particular, when I first got into extended range instruments, which I should probably mention, back in the 80s, his album, The Works, with the tune Wounded Knee, was one of the first albums I went through, just all the way through.
Okay.
Very much as in the fact that when I was first learning fretless, sure, there was a story.
Of course.
And I learned Continuum, and I learned some tunes, and I thought I was pretty crafty. And then I heard the music he was doing with Joni Mitchell, which that's what changed my life. Tunes like Coyote, that's the stuff I was into. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Havana.
Right? He did
yes,
of Life, Mingus, and then what was the other one?
Hijira. Yeah.
That's right.
I'm trying to remember to pronounce it right. Yeah. Right. But then, and of course, right when I was going into college, Pino Palladino hit the scene. Holy cow! And when I was a sophomore in college, Pete Townshend's tune "Give Blood" came out, and I started hearing these beautiful things, and I started learning that because I had studied guitar a little bit, and I was learning chords, and I was like, this guy is doing amazing things, and it's all in tune. It's really pretty. And in 1984, I was listening to, of course, Thomas Dolby that I still listen to, and there was an album that came out that had Hyperactive on it. What was the name of that album? It wasn't supposedly the Age of Wireless. It was the next one that came out after that. But Matthew Seligman, who's a friend of mine on Facebook, played fretless bass on stuff. And then, of course, what we saw when I, by the time I was getting around to checking out the concert footage of Pete Townsend playing live with Simon Phillips, who's amazing. Chucho Marchand from Bogota, Colombia, the bass player and fretless bass player from Bogota, Colombia, was playing he was the touring bassist, who's also a friend of mine on Facebook, which is what I use Facebook for. I use Facebook to go track down these cats and say, hey, man, thanks for the music. And so, matter of fact,
that's great. That's great.
Yeah, I do that and just say, hey, you were a hero of mine back then. You still sound great. And actually what's funny is that's come back to me in some weird ways. Other people are like, hey, man, I heard this album you did back today, and it was really cool. About my instruments, I wanted to say about extended range instruments for the past, I'm going to say 12, 13 years. Let's see, how can I start this? I'm not going to labor the issue too deeply. At a point, and I can't remember when it was the late 90s, might have been the late 90s, might have been the early 2000s, I can't remember what. You'll have to ask Jimmy Haslip. He was given a bass by Roscoe, and it was a 7-string. It was a 7-string, and it was a fretless 7-string, I believe, and it had a low F sharp string on it. And
really?
he decided to tour with that bass.
So he was touring Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, he was with Jack at the time, and of course
the lower
he's left
instead of the high F, because a normal 7-string would
right. No, it was a low. It was low F sharp below B. That was the thing. And we were talking and we were hanging out, and I played it. Because he's left-handed, he plays upside down, so his low F sharp strings on the bottom. So I flipped this over, and I fell in love with this thing because it sounded so good. I mean, Roscoe Keith makes such great instruments. And so back about 14 years ago, I signed on with SIT strings. I love SIT strings. I highly recommend them. And
what is it about it that you like? Like, I play a very specific
tone.
string.
The tone. I love the harmonic quality of the bass, of the strings. I love the way they feel. I mean, I was a huge fan of GHS progressives in the 80s and early 90s. Yeah. Those were my go-to string. I was playing pre-Gibson Michael Tobias bass at the time. I had 2 6s and a 5, and that was with GHS progressives. That was a Gary Willis thing, of course.
So that was
And
Tobias before MTD, right? That was Tobias
yeah,
and Gibson
yeah,
bought Tobias,
pre-Gibson.
and then
Yeah.
yeah.
So I had a signature, I had a custom, and I had a basic. I had a basic 5, and I had a signature 6 and a custom 6.
Okay.
And they were such great instruments, but I was doing a lot of sessions at that time. It got to the place where I could hear, oh, that's a Ken Smith with narrow pickups. Oh, that's a Ken Smith with Bartolini's. Oh, that's a Tobias. Oh, I just got to the place where I was hearing the smooth jazz on the radio, and it was, so I really started burning out on certain pickups and things of that nature. So I played those basses
Which
through.
were like what? Typically all Bartolini's? Like Bartolini was owning.
Yeah,
it
was huge. Yeah, and then there was Arrow. Arrow pickups were big at the time.
Oh yeah, I forgot about those. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was the stock Ken Smith thing. All the new jazz guys either played Ken Smith or Tobias or
Right.
So I was just like but
I think that was because
I stayed with
Petrucci, because his first records were before he signed with
Ken Smith.
Yamaha, he was a Ken Smith. So like,
He's
all right, he's
Smith guy,
a 6-stringer. So like, boom, Ken Smith blew all the way up. Yeah.
Everybody. And actually, I know John as well. John and I became really good friends back when he was playing, when Chick Corea with the electric band was still a trio. They came through Boulder. And before Scott Henderson joined, it was pretty cool.
Okay.
And so, yeah. So
it was Scott, then Mike Miller, right?
Scott and Mike, yeah, exactly. Then he came through, and then they got Eric Marienthal came in, and I love Mike. He's so wonderful. His playing
I've done
on
a couple gigs with him out here. Like,
yeah,
he's a sweetheart of a guy.
Sweet guy. Yeah, he's really nice. He played with Chad Wackerman on his solo records back in the 90s, and those were earth-shattering as well for me. But so anyway, about 12 years ago, I went to SI Strings and started talking to them about developing an F-sharp string, and we sat down and put our heads together and got some things done. And so now my signature set is a 6-string set with no high C, so it's F-sharp through G. And yeah, man, the F-sharp string is a 168 gauge. It's bad exposed core. It is so beautiful. It sounds so wonderful. And especially on fuzz. And so I've been playing those now for about 15 years. That's kind of what I've been into. I've had a great conversation with the guys over at Manus in Poland, and I'm picking up a Caledonia 6. That's going to have my tuning.
If you have enjoyed this episode and would like to know more about upcoming guests and other Bass Shed happenings, you can text the word SHED, SHED, to 66866. I try to make it easy. I try to make it easy as possible to stay connected. And let's be honest, we're all sending texts throughout the day, so just shoot me one. Shoot me one that says SHED, SHED, to 66866. And we'll get you plugged into the newsletter. You can also hear previous versions of the podcast at Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. Please take a second to rate the show. And if you'd like, you can donate to keep this thing happening. There is a link for that at thebasshed.com/podcast. All right, that was my talk with Brent-Anthony Johnson, and I know what you're all thinking. What you're thinking is, Ryan, what the hell happened there at the end? Well, I'm going to tell you what the hell happened there at the end. I was recording the conversation on an app on my phone, and that's why the sound quality is poor-ish. Because it was all bounced down to one mono track. So there's that. I couldn't do anything about that. And then what I just realized happened, like literally just realized happening while I'm putting this episode together, is that there was an hour cutoff. So in real time, my conversation with Brent-Anthony went on for about probably another 45 minutes. But I just realized that it was cut off at an hour. So I will be bringing him back in, and we will definitely we will hear more from Brent-Anthony Johnson, because there was a lot more to it. We got into a really nice groove there at the end. That's not a bass player pun or anything. Like, the conversation was going very nicely. Yeah. So check out. Wait for that one. Hold on. Brent-Anthony will be coming back, and we're gonna talk some more to him. Soon as we schedule it, and but that's going to be happening. And Brent-Anthony, I apologize that I can now work technology. You and I both know what a struggle I've been having with all this, and my bad. So that's his story, folks. I'm sticking to it. My name's Ryan, and I'll catch you on the next one.